Hi, I'm Brian Dunn, and welcome to the most important podcast ever. What makes it so important? It's not about me, it's about you. This podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the moments of resilience, the lessons learned, and the small acts that made a big difference. From retail floors to boardrooms, we'll share the untold stories that shape lives and careers. This week is our first Thanksgiving week show, and I'm very excited to talk about some things that are near and dear to my heart. Black Friday means a lot of different things depending what side of the door you stand on. For most people, it's about deals, excitement, maybe even a little chaos. But for those of us who lived it from the inside, and I mean really lived it, Black Friday is something else entirely. It's pressure, yes, but it's also teamwork at its highest form, it's leadership, and it's humanity on full display in all its shapes and forms. I asked people, our listeners, our audience, our extended family, to send in their Black Friday stories. And although I didn't get any video submissions, I got a lot of really great stories. And for everybody who submitted, there's a mug headed your way. I'll be reaching out for addresses where I don't have them. But today's episode isn't about shopping or sales. It's really more about what Black Friday teaches us about people and about ourselves. Uh, and first thing I want to do is I want to talk about Black Friday for those who have lived it on the inside is not a one day event. Black Friday in my retail life was a full year event. Right after a Black Friday, the debriefing starts. What worked, what didn't work, et cetera, et cetera. And new plans started getting formed right after the first of the year. And I will tell you, my very first 1985, my first Black Friday as a salesman, I'd never seen anything like it. It was in the Minnetonka store, store 4, and the doors open. And I should remind you, this is when VCRs were becoming a thing. This is when compact disc players were becoming a thing. And camcorders were starting to become reasonably affordable. And they were the it items. Forget Oprah's favorite things. The list of the hottest gifts to give were basically things that we were involved with, 3 of the top 5. And when those doors opened, it was 500 people, 1,000 people all at once, just in the store, and it was on at the bell. 6 a.m., ding, 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 and it was on. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. Imagine being a salesman and having this sea of humanity coming at you, just want it, want it, want it, want it, want it. No sales pitch involved really at all. In fact, one of my first jobs was to stand behind a stack, I'll never forget it, of Mitsubishi VCRs, and I was just selling them right off the stack with, you're going to need cables, you're going to need this, you're going to need a 2-year warranty, all the things you were going to need. And it was really amazing. And time flew by. I looked at my watch, the doors went at 6. Next thing I knew, it was 5 p.m. I was exhausted, but exhilarated. It was really an amazing event. And as the years went by, I got more and more involved. First, running my own store, then running a district where I was responsible for Black Friday and 8 stores, and then on and on and on, till eventually I had a very senior responsibility across the chain for Black Friday, for everything. And then you're sweating Black Friday everywhere. You're sweating a blizzard in Omaha. You're sweating blown pipes in Pennsylvania. You're sweating every possible imagination. And as per Murphy's Law, it always happens at the worst possible minute in the worst possible place. And yet you adapt, you problem solve real time, and it was so exciting. And then my role grew very senior, and pretty soon I was doing TV hits. That's what all the insiders say, right? It's a TV hit on Good Morning America, on the Today Show, on whatever CBS's iteration was at the time, on Fox, on CNN, on and on and on. And it was so much fun to have the excitement of what our employees and our customers were doing on those Black Fridays. And those Black Fridays became family events. And these are really very fond memories for me, where we would have our Thanksgiving dinner and we started eating like at 2 or 3, so that by 7 or 8, I could be out in the stores and out in the parking lots. Sometimes my boys would come with me. Sometimes Susie would come with me. And then I'd get out of the car and work the line and talk to people and ask them what they were there for and why they loved it. And so often it was as much about the hunt for value. It was a game for some people. And for some people, it was part of their Thanksgiving tradition. And I thought that was extraordinarily cool. And I really, really enjoyed those conversations with people. And usually the first 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people in line had been there for a couple of days. They had camped on the sidewalk to be the first one in. And I always made sure to give those people some gift cards and to thank them, because it was just such an extraordinary thing that you're going to your favorite retailer a couple of days in advance and camping out. I will never ever forget it. And a lot of times what I would do, I would go out and visit the stores after dinner, as I said. And then about 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m., I'd sneak home, wake up my boys, and bring them with. And this was later when I was doing some TV stuff. And I would be doing a hit on national TV, and I was always a nervous wreck doing that. I know I'm supposed to say no, it was super, always nervous. And I would peek over, and my boys would be staring at me, making faces, just doing stuff little kids do. And it was instantly a reminder for what really was important. And I'll give you a hint, it wasn't a TV hit, it was those faces looking at me. And it calmed me, and it was great. And so many people helped with all that. But Black Friday to me, it's one of the things I miss most. And I know it's changed and it's evolved with the advent of, with the explosion of online and all those things. And the way I remember it, it was the golden days of Black Friday. And I really, really look back on it with great love. They were exhausting days, they were long days, and the men and women in the stores were such heroes. The way they took the onslaught of customer after customer after customer with a smile on their face. And I look back on that so fondly. And so many of you sent in those stories, and I read them all, and it really inspired me all over again. and lit up that corridor in my memory, and I thank you for that. Um, and I have nothing but love for all of you and how we march together through all that. I think it is one of the happiest and most fulfilling chapters of my life. And I really hope next year, season 2, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, I want video submissions, or better yet, give me your submission to come be a guest and share your Black Friday story. Okay? Um, Before we go any further, this being the Thanksgiving episode, I want to thank our many, many and rapidly growing subscribers and listeners and watchers. I'm so grateful. This podcast has inspired me. It has given the great gift of lighting up my Christmases past, with apologies to Charles Dickens, and all these wonderful memories. And it's made me appreciate my Christmas present. And it's made me excited about the Christmases to come because I feel inspired. I feel fulfilled by this work. And I feel ever so grateful for those of you that have shared your many stories with us. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I've been asked by a number of people new to us here, why is it called the most important podcast ever? And I'll tell you why. In my prior life working at Best Buy, every year I would get up and I would give a speech to store folks, our corporate folks, wherever I could grab a mic. And I would talk about how important the holiday selling season was to us. And I'd always say at some point in the speech, this is the most important holiday selling season ever. So it was an easy modification for me to call this the most important podcast ever because I thought it would trigger the memories with my Best Buy friends and family. And I thought it worked because those stories that our guests have chosen to share with us are so beyond inspiring, and they have been so generous in sharing those stories with us. I think about, and I'm going to run through the roster of guests. I think about Susan Berard, who was so brave. Dear, dear Susan, she agreed to be the first episode. And at the first episode, I went back and watched it recently. Susan was magnificent. I was terrible. And Susan agreed to be my first guest. I will never forget that. And Susan's coming back in season 2 to update us on her Crow family. And I promise you, Susan, I'll do better. Troy Amaris, who came and joined us and talked about the Final Four, and more importantly, talked about his courage to reinvent his own life. And then we had Michelle Bonham. Mish deserves a special thanks from me because as I was creating this for months before, she was acting as um, practice interview for me. She was talking me through her perspective on things, and she is the greatest gift a friend can be, and that is holding up the honesty mirror and telling you exactly what she thinks. I want to thank Eric Harkins for the lessons he taught us about culture and candor and don't be an a-hole. I love that. Jimmy Williams, who came and told the story of his family, Leslie, Kyle, and Summer, and a story that is near and dear to my heart and anybody that heard it. I want to thank the amazing Karen Howard Jacobs, who's going to be coming back to do an episode for us. We've got it scheduled where she has completed marathons on 7 continents and she has such stories to tell. and her husband, Matt Jacobs, the first husband and wife combo on the pod. Thank you so much, Matt. My good friend, Dr. Guy Baudin, who came and did 3 episodes on leadership. Guy's coming back in season 2 for a 3 episode arc. Get a lot of letters. The brave and courageous and spiritual Michael Treboni, talking about creative discipline and drive and faith. The Reverend J. Dan Renfro, Reverend Dan, uh, his calling, his service, in the hellacious fight he had to get to the light. Love you, Dan. Appreciate you. My dear friend Heidi Pierce, with empathy, her great communication skills. Reconnecting with Heidi has been such a gift. Nothing but love for you, Heidi. Tony Sagastumi, for persistence against the odds and the importance of managing your own career. Earl Allen, the man who runs every single day, who talks about his mental health and how he's discovered that running of 20 miles a day is the elixir that he needs. The courage Earl showed in telling his story. Earl, brother, I think about you every single day. You're in my prayers every single day. The world is a much better place with you here, Earl. Jay Pivick, hey, and please buy a copy of the Book of Piv, William, for Christmas stockings, his legacy of coaching and caring. Piv is a teacher and a heck of a good guy, almost as good a guy as he thinks he is. I want to thank my friend Jeff Peterson for he's talking about mentorship and life lessons, both of which he shared with me generously. Emily Peterson Boone, who came on with great spirit, sensitivity, and talked about the art of storytelling. Emily is amazing, and I'm so glad I got to reconnect with her. My buddy Michael Voss, the great communicator, wit, and heart. Michael did 2 episodes, including interviewing me, which I really appreciated. Bob Salvino, his steadiness and character. Lakeisha Ransom, her breakthrough moments. Kenny Miller, his quiet strength and determination through a major battle. Will Dunn, my son, assistant coach for the Houston Rockets, excuse me, on becoming that, on the grind, the growth, the identity. I'm proud of you, Will. I love you, man. Kevin Trainer, on sharing his perspective and clarity through the darkest journey a human being can go through. I want to thank Miles Free for, I like to think of Miles as potential awakened. He's just live energy looking for a place to create always. I want to thank Dave Benura, who I think of his messages of grit, humility, hard work. I want to thank Angie Bruin, who nothing but love for you, Ange. Her fighting spirit, her determination, her will to win through tough battles. I want to thank my friend Eric Curry. Eric, one of the real treats of this podcast was getting reconnected with you. And we actually followed up and had the steak dinner, actually pork chop dinner, but it was great. I want to thank Johnny Tower, JT, coach of the Division One University of St. Thomas Tommies. Roll Toms. Thank you for sharing all your lessons, your excellence and intentions, JT. I want to thank my friend Dawn Bryant for the beauty of her story, choosing to live free. And I want to thank Debbie Estes, who is one of the most influential people in bringing major events to the Twin Cities, whose name you don't know. I did all of them in sequence, but I left 2 out. And that's because I want us to take just a minute. And that's Steve Dabosky, who told us his story about in the middle of his life, late middle, deciding he wanted to be a captain of a catamaran in the Caribbean. And I said, that's really cool. Have you been sailing a long time? He's like, nope, I'm going to go down there and learn. And now he is. He's got a beautiful wife that's in the same business. They dive, they sail, they captain these ships. You really need to reach out if you're looking for an exciting thing to do. I intend to book with them for sure. And at the end of his episode, Steve talked about the fact that one of our former colleagues who he had worked with, they weren't best buddies, not bosom buddies, but they had worked with, Brad Weinrich, needed a kidney or he wasn't going to be around. Steve went and got tested. Brad came on the following episode, talked about his journey, his brave fight through this. This Wednesday, Steve is donating his kidney to Brad in a miraculous act of friendship and love. So let's all say a prayer or karma or whatever your thing is. But let's all think about them on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving for this selfless act, and let's wish them the very best. You are both in my prayers, and I'm honored to call you both friends. We have great guests lined up for season 2, and it's going to be even a bigger, better year. Now, to close, I want to close with my favorite Thanksgiving story. And I really need to give a shout out to a friend who posted this on her wall many years ago. And it is the parable of the two wolves. And it's attributed to the Cherokee. And I want you to think about this because I've come to believe it very deeply. You know the saying, the wolf is at the door? The wolf is always at the door. When we are tired, when we are stressed, when we're overwhelmed, or when it's green grass and high tides with the wind blowing out, when everything is going right and the world seems calm, when life feels effortless, it doesn't matter. The wolf is always at the door. Here's the parable that Cindy shared that I love. I love it so much that I have a painting of it on the hallway into my bedroom. A grandfather tells his grandson, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two ferociously powerful wolves. One wolf is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, guilt, resentment, fear. The other wolf is joy, peace, love, faith, hope, kindness, humility, empathy, and truth." And the grandson looks at his grandfather with concern. How do we navigate this? And then he says, "What happens? How does this happen, grandfather?" And the grandfather says, "This fight is happening inside you, inside every person. It's as natural as breathing." The boy then asks, "Which wolf wins?" And the grandfather says, "The one you feed." Because in every moment, in the noise and in the quiet, in the stress, in the celebration, when we're bone tired or everything feels effortless, the wolf is at the door. The wolf is always at the door. And every one of us gets to choose which wolf we let in, which wolf we strengthen, which wolf we feed. Choose kindness, choose humility, Choose gratitude. Choose the better wolf in your nature. Choose wisely. Thank you for indulging me. I want to wish you all the happiest of Thanksgivings, and may God bless you and your homes and all your families, both blood families and families you choose. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you next time.